In the heart of Louisiana, where cypress trees tower over foggy wetlands and bullfrogs sing the lullabies of the South, something ancient stirred. It began not with thunder, but with a whisper in the mud, a pregnant hippo named Willow, and two humans about to witness the impossible. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you listening to this story from? We'd love to know. The Air and Cypress River Wildlife Reserve, nestled on the outskirts of St. Martinville, Louisiana, carried the scent of wet earth and slow-moving water. Early October rain had soaked the banks of the swampy preserve for days, leaving the trails slick with mud and the cypress trees swaying in the lazy wind. Dawn had barely broken when the soft hum of a motorized cart pushed through the rising mist. In the front seat sat Clara Monroe, her dark auburn hair pulled into a low bun, flecks of gray dancing at her temples. At 49, Clara wore her age like a river stone-weathered and calm. Her eyes were soft brown, often distant, as if watching things others couldn't see. Years in the field had given her a sturdy frame and strong hands, but it was the quiet sadness in her voice that lingered after conversations. That sadness came from long ago, from a night when her own daughter had slipped away during labora memory she rarely spoke of, but that never left her. Next to her sat Ben Carter, 32, lean and broad-shouldered, his beard trimmed close, baseball cap shadowing his eyes. Ben wasn't much for words, but when he spoke, it was with care. He had a natural bond with animals. She never rushed them, never raised his voice. Locals often said Ben had bayou in his blood, and maybe that was true. Born in Breaux Bridge, he grew up fishing the very rivers he now worked to protect. Clara trusted him more than anyone at the reserve. Their destination that morning was the southern bank, near the bend in the river where the hippos usually lounged. But one had drawn particular attention over the past weeks. Willow, a female hippopotamus, estimated to be around 14 years old. She had a wide scar behind her right ear end, old injury from years ago, likely from a tangle with a territorial male. Willow had been in the reserve since she was rescued from a dying waterhole during a record drought in Texas. Since then, she had grown into a calm, resilient presence within the herd. But lately, something about her didn't sit right with Clara. Willow's belly had expanded rapidly more than normal for a pregnant hippo. At first, Clara had assumed it was simply a healthy calf growing. But by week 3 of close observation, she wasn't so sure. Willow moved slower. She grunted more. Her appetite shrank. And most concerning, she had begun to separate from the herd, choosing to lie alone under the same willow tree each day, motionless, save for the slow rise and fall of her breathing. That wasn't like her. As Clara and Ben pulled the cart up to the ridge, Willow was already visible down by the edge of the water, her bulk pressed into the damp earth like a boulder in mourning. The rain had paused for now, but clouds still hung low, heavy and waiting. Clara stepped out, her boots squelching in the mud. She raised a hand to shade her eyes, though there was no sun. "She hasn't moved," she murmured. Ben jumped down and adjusted the binoculars hanging from his neck. "She was in the same spot at dusk," he said. "I marked it on the log." Clara took a few careful steps forward. She didn't want to spook Willow, though the hippo seemed indifferent to their presence. Her skin glistened wet from the morning mist, and her massive sides trembled faintly. Clara's chest tightened. "Do you think it's twins?" Ben asked, a rare question from him. Clara exhaled. "I don't know. Could be a large calf or something else. But something's not right. I want to monitor her closely today. I'll bring the portable scanner this afternoon." Ben nodded and pulled out his small field notebook, scribbling in quick, square handwriting. Willow gave a low groan, barely more than a whisper in the bayou stillness. It made Clara flinch. The sound was pain, or fatigue, or both. "I hate this part," Clara said softly. Ben looked over. "The waiting?" "No," Clara replied. "The not knowing." That afternoon, Clara returned with the scanner and set it of darts just in case. They stayed until evening, watching Willow shift only slightly. A few birds settled on her back for warmth. Nearby, the other hippos remained downstream, content, unaware, maybe unwilling to approach her. By dusk, Clara had set up a temporary shelter beneath the Spanish moss, a tarp over a frame, just close enough to observe Willow through the trees. Ben hung a lantern and fixed a folding chair beside the makeshift structure. "You going to stay the night?" he asked. Clara nodded. "I need to be here. I've lost too many births to absence." Ben didn't ask for explanation. He just nodded, understanding more than most. As the sun sank below the cypress trees, turning the water to glassy gold, Willow's swollen belly shifted again, a tremor beneath thick skin. Clara watched through the field glass, her pulse quickening. A storm was forecast for the next evening. She had a feeling, a knowing that something would happen before then. In the shadows of the reserve, the wind picked up slightly, rattling reeds and brushing leaves like fingertips over water. Clara wrapped herself in a canvas coat, sat in silence, and whispered to the coming night, "Hold her, please, just a little longer." She had seen many animals come and go, but something about Willow's presence, her strength, despite the silence, made Clara hope harder than she had in years. By the following evening, Cypress River was swallowed in a curtain of rain, so thick it turned the bayou into a mirror of blurred reflections and shifting shadows. The sky, once merely overcast, had surrendered entirely to the storm. Thunder rolled in slow waves across the treetops, and the tall cypress knees emerging from the water swayed like watchers in mourning. Willow remained at the edge of the shallows, unmoving, her great body half submerged in mud and water, the raindrops rolling off her hide like tiny rivers of worry. She hadn't eaten in almost 2 days now. Her breathing was heavy and drawn out, like every inhale was weighed down by something more than just the calf she carried. Inside the nearby temporary shelter, Clara Monroe sat with her knees pulled up to her chest, a flashlight resting in her lap, and a damp notebook beside her. Rain drummed against the tarp roof with a ceaseless rhythm that made everything feel slower. Her clothes were slightly damp, but she didn't seem to notice. Her gaze was fixed out toward the blur. That was Willow. Her thoughts carried far into the past. 6 years ago, Clara had received a call from a game warden in West Texas about a hippo calf stranded in a dried-out basin. At the time, the drought had decimated dozens of wetland species. Clara had flown out the next day. The calf had been no bigger than a small canoe, ribs showing under cracked skin, eyes dulled from dehydration. They'd named her Willow, after the only shade tree that had survived in that dying marsh. Clara had sat with her for hours in the transport truck, whispering to her in the dark, promising she'd have a better life. And now, the once rescued calf was moments, maybe hours, from becoming a mother herself. Ben Carter arrived with a second generator just after nightfall, his rain jacket plastered to his back, and his jeans soaked up to the knees. He gave a quick wave to Clara before setting the generator down. "They say the storm will hit hardest in the next 2 hours, he said, his voice slightly raised to cut through the downpour. "We'll need to reinforce the east side of the tarp if we're staying the night." Clara nodded silently. She rose and helped him secure the flaps with cord and stakes, their hands working wordlessly. When finished, they ducked back into the shelter, steam rising from their clothes. Ben removed his cap, revealing short-cropped dark hair plastered to his scalp. His face, always unreadable, looked especially grim tonight. "Still no movement?" he asked, nodding toward Willow's hulking silhouette. Clara shook her head. "None. No change in position, but her breathing slower. I think she's saving her strength." Ben leaned against the support post and sighed. "I remember when we first let her into the big pond. She tried to chase off the alpha male like she was bulletproof." Clara smiled faintly. "She's always been stubborn. That's probably what saved her back then." There was a pause before she added, almost to herself, "She reminds me of Ava." Ben glanced sideways. "Your daughter?" Clara nodded. Same look in the eyes. Determined, gentle but fierce. Ava used to rescue injured birds from the backyard, once made me build a hospital out of shoeboxes. Her voice caught slightly. She didn't make it through labor. Umbilical cord was wrapped. We were too late. The shelter was quiet, save for the rain and a soft creak of canvas. Ben didn't say anything, but he placed his hand lightly on Clara's shoulder, just for a moment. It was the only gesture he had, and the only one she needed. Later that night, the wind picked up, howling through the trees and causing the swamp to hiss with rising currents. Clara stood at the shelter's edge, watching Willow through her binoculars. She saw the gentle flick of an ear, the slight roll of a shoulder. A change. Not much, but something. Clara's heart picked up pace. She stepped into the rain, walking slowly, boots sinking into muck, until she was within 20 feet of the hippo. She crouched down. "Hey, girl," she called softly. "You still with me?" Willow did not react, but her breathing shifted deeper now, almost as though she heard the voice. Clara sat in silence. The storm roared overhead, and the world smelled of wet earth and electric sky. And then Clara said the words she'd been carrying like stones in her chest. "I won't lose you," she whispered. "I won't let another life slip through my hands. I promise you, Willow. No more death. Not tonight." Behind her, Ben emerged with a heavy thermal blanket and a supply crate. He paused at the sight of Clara in the rain, kneeling like a prayer. He didn't interrupt. He simply moved beside her and began laying down straw, insulating the muddy bank. He moved with purpose, quietly building a space that could protect the newborn if it arrived early. By midnight, the wind eased. The thunder rumbled farther away. Willow lifted her head slightly, turned her gaze, and for the first time in days, locked eyes with Clara. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. The wind howled through the cypress trees like the wailing of a restless spirit, bending the branches until they scraped the sky. The rain returned in thick curtains, hammering the canopy tarp that Ben had reinforced earlier. Midnight passed, but no one slept. Inside the shelter, the lantern flickered low, casting a golden halo around Clara Monroe's pale, weathered face. Her eyes remained fixed on the figure just beyond the veil of rain willow, the pregnant hippo, now breathing harder than ever, her flanks shuddering with each tremble of pain. Clara glanced down at the small, waterproof case beside Hearth medical kit she rarely used in the field. Inside, nestled among gauze and tools, was a single vial of oxytocin, a uterine stimulant. It was a calculated risk. No documented trial had ever used it on a wild hippo. But Clara had weighed all the odds, and this wasn't about risk anymore. It was about survival. At 2:14 a.m., she zipped up her raincoat and stepped out into the storm, boots sinking into slick grass and mud as she approached Willow's massive body. The hippo let out a low monod, aggressive, not warning, but weary. Clara stopped just short of her head and knelt, whispering gently, "Easy now, girl. I need you to trust me." Behind her, Ben Carter kept a respectful distance, holding a flashlight with a steady hand. His face was calm, but taut with concern. Rain trickled down his cheeks, blending with the sweat of anticipation. He didn't say a word he didn't need to. Clara reached forward and pressed the syringe to the thick hide on Willow's rear leg, whispering an apology as she injected the dose. Then they waited. The first sign came within minutes. Willow's body tensed, and her moans shifted into deeper, rhythmic groans. Her tail thrashed once, sending water splashing. Her breathing became louder, heavier. Clara backed away to the shelter, stripped off her gloves, and grabbed the dry towels they'd kept under the crate. "It's starting," she told Ben. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the bayou in harsh white light. Thunder cracked like bones, snapping in the dark. Willow's body began to rock in place, contractions visibly rippling across her wide abdomen. Ben moved to the edge of the shelter and crouched low, his face unreadable but alert. For nearly 40 minutes, the storm and Willow fought side by side. Clara watched, hands clenched in helpless awe. Then finally, just as the wind eased into a momentary stillness, a shape emerged wet, dark, and trembling. The calf slid onto the muddy earth with a dull thump, a mess of flesh and promise. Clara gasped and bolted forward, crouching near the newborn. The little hippo twitched, its legs kicked weakly. It sucked air in sudden, desperate bursts. Clara dropped to her knees beside it and gently wiped away fluid from its face with a dry cloth, her hands shaking. "He's breathing," she whispered. "Oh my God, he's breathing." Ben stepped in beside her, wide-eyed. He had never seen a birth up close like this. Is it okay?" Clara nodded, tears already streaming down her cheeks. "It's a boy," she said, "and he's alive." Willow let out a long, guttural exhalione of release. Her eyes fluttered shut. Clara scooped a tarp under the calf and gently slid him closer to his mother's belly. The calf nestled instinctively against her warmth. The rain softened to a whisper. But the moment of peace was short-lived. Willow's body suddenly tensed again, her eyes shot open. She groaned louder, roarer this time than bellowed, a sound filled with agony. Her legs jerked, her tail lashed. The calf, startled, rolled slightly to the side. Clara froze. "She's still in labor," she said aloud, more to herself than anyone. Ben frowned. "Another one?" Clara dropped to her knees again, placing her palm gently on the curve of Willow's abdomen. What she felt made her blood run cold, another set of contractions, not fading, not slowing. "There's another one," she whispered. "She's having twins." Ben's flashlight wavered. That's not possible." Clara met his eyes, her voice firm despite the pounding in her chest. "It's rare, almost unheard of, but it's happening, and this one's not coming as easy." She grabbed her kit, her fingers fumbling through tools. "He's stuck, breech maybe. If we don't act fast, both could die. Or Willow too." Ben swallowed hard. "What do you need?" "I need light, and I need you ready to help move the first calf away if I say so." Without hesitation, Ben adjusted the spotlight, angling it toward Willow's rear as Clara pulled on long gloves and braced herself for the most dangerous part of her work. Her hands, once trembling, became steady as steel. She moved in close again, whispering, "Hold on, Willow. I promised you." The storm had shifted inland by the time Clara knelt beside Willow again, but its echoes still rolled across the cypress canopy like distant drums. The wind now carried a chill, the kind that sank into bone and made everything feel heavier. The earth smelled of damp roots and iron-rich blood. One calf lay safely nestled near Willow's side, its tiny chest rising and falling as it pressed against her warm flank. But Clara's focus was elsewhere, on the massive body of the mother hippo, whose labored breaths had begun to grow ragged again, and on the life that had yet to emerge. Ben Carter, standing a few yards away, held a wide-beamed field lantern in one hand and a folding shovel in the other. His arms ached from building a makeshift flood barrier with logs and tarp to keep rising water from sweeping over their work area. Mud clung to his jeans and boots like cement, and sweat mingled with rainwater under the brim of his cap. But when Clara called his name short, Sharfie was at her side in seconds. "He's not turning," she said, her voice clipped with focus. "The second calf is stuck. If I don't rotate him soon, Willow might hemorrhage." Ben didn't ask questions. He simply planted the lantern on a crate, knelt across from her, and held a clean towel. The light cast long shadows across Willow's soaked back, making her look like a mountain breathing slowly through a veil of pain. Clara pulled on another pair of long plastic gloves, her fingers stiff from the cold. She reached into the birthing canal with slow precision, muttering softly to both herself and to Willow, as if words could guide the impossible. "Come on, sweetheart, just a little more." Minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Willow groaned a long, mournful sound that faded into a whimper. Her eyes were half-lidded, but her tail kept twitching. Clara's hands were deep inside now, carefully repositioning the calf. She felt the curvature of a spine, the bump of a knee. One hind leg had caught sideways, locking the calf in a dangerous position. Ben wiped sweat from Clara's brow. You're doing everything you can. I'm not losing her, Clara said, jaw tight. Not this time. Willow's breathing hitched. Her sides quivered. Clara adjusted again, twisting gently, aligning the hips. And then, beneath the weight of mud and breath and pain, the calf began to shift. It was subtle, just an inch at first, then another. Now, Clara said. Push, Willow, please. The mother hippo bellowed, sound of defiance and desperation, and, with one final contraction, the second calf slid free, a dark, motionless form collapsing into Clara's waiting arms. It was smaller than the first, its skin wrinkled and blue-gray, head tucked unnaturally low. Clara gasped and pulled the baby away from the waterline. He's not breathing. Ben dropped beside her, dropping his gloves, and reached into the emergency kit. CPR? No time, Clara said. She tilted the calf's head back, cleared the mouth, and began gentle compressions on the chest, timing them with the rhythm of her own breath. Come on, little one, she whispered. You've come this far, come back to me. Seconds felt like minutes. Then suddenly a twitch, a cough, a high, fragile cry barely louder than the rustle of the wind. The calf's chest heaved, then again. Clara's hands froze. Ben, he's breathing. Ben stared in disbelief, then gave a hoarse laugh. You did it. No, Clara corrected, eyes wet. She did it. They placed the newborn beside its sibling, who instinctively nuzzled closer. Both calves now lay tucked beside their mother, damp and blinking against the lantern light, steam rising from their bodies in the cool air. Willow's eyes opened, just enough to take in the shapes beside her. Her trunk-like snout nudged them weakly, a gesture of relief, recognition, and triumph. From behind the trees, another figure emerged, silent and slow. It was Naomi Green, a petite woman in her late 50s with curly silver blonde hair, pulled back tightly into a bun. Her face was stern, with fine wrinkles around her eyes and mouth that softened only when she smiled, something rare, but genuine when it came. Naomi was the senior ranger at Cypress River, and though she rarely came out during night shifts, the call Clara had sent over the radio minutes earlier had drawn her from her bunk. I brought warm blankets, Naomi said, her voice low but steady. She knelt beside Ben, eyes wide at the sight before her. Twins? Clara nodded. One breech. Almost didn't make it. Naomi exhaled slowly, then gently laid a blanket over the calves. I've been here 22 years. Never seen a twin birth from a hippo. Not even close. Willow groaned again, but this time it was a soft sound. Not pain, not fear, just exhaustion. Clara rested her hand on the mother's broadside. She's stable, for now. The three humans sat in silence for a few long minutes, listening to the sounds of breathing, wind, and the soft whimpers of newborn life. You saved her, Naomi said at last, quietly. Clara didn't respond right away. She stared at the calves, her voice barely a whisper. I kept my promise. Dawn broke slowly over Cypress River, brushing the misty wetlands with pale gold and soft coral. The storm had passed, leaving behind a stillness so fragile it felt like a held breath. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth, crushed leaves, and the faint musk of animals resting after a long and unforgiving night. In the clearing by the swollen bend of the river, the temporary birthing shelter stood quiet, weather-beaten, but intact. Its plastic flaps fluttered gently in the breeze, like the end of a whispered prayer. Clara Monroe sat just outside the shelter, her arms wrapped around her knees, a blanket draped over her shoulders. Her auburn hair, now half untied and streaked with mud, clung to her temples. Her eyes, lined and puffy from exhaustion, blinked against the soft morning light. But they were open wide and alive, in a way they hadn't been in years. She turned her head as a low snuffle came from nearby. Willow, the great hippo matriarch, had shifted again. Her body still trembled with fatigue, but she was no longer flat against the mud. She was rising slowly, awkwardly, but deliberately, Her massive legs shook beneath her, knees buckling, then straightening with a stubborn grace. Clara stood up instinctively, heart pounding. Ben Carter was already nearby, squatting in the dewy grass. His face, usually unreadable, now bore a faint smile edged with disbelief. His hoodie was soaked through, and a scrape on his forearm bled slightly, unnoticed. He didn't move toward Willow. He just whispered, "She's standing." With one heaving breath, Willow reached full height and turned her head toward her calves. The newborn smaller than typical but very much live-rested beside each other in the shallow grass bed Ben had made during the night. Their eyes blinked lazily in the light, skin still slightly wrinkled from birth. One kicked awkwardly. The other lifted its nose to sniff the morning air. Willow stepped forward, one heavy foot at a time, and gently pressed her snout against the first calf's back, then the second. A long, low exhale came from her throat, a hum of recognition and comfort. Clara swallowed hard, her hands clutched against her chest. She took one step closer, her boots squelching in the mud. And then, in a moment that made time pause, Willow turned her great head toward Clara. The hippo leaned forward, eyes soft, and slowly extended her snout toward Clara's hand. Clara held it out, trembling. Willow's lips brushed her fingersaw, gentle, lingering gesture, part instinct, part something else entirely. Then, just once, Willow licked the back of Clara's hand. Ben blinked rapidly and turned his head away. From across the marsh, faint movement caught Clara's eye. The rest of the hippo, heard about 7 adults and 3 juveniles, merged silently from behind the cypress trees. They had been watching from a distance, wary and protective. Now, sensing that the danger had passed, they stepped cautiously forward, encircling Willow and her calves. It wasn't a tight formation, more of a reverent ring, as though bearing witness to a sacred event. A young male hippo let out a soft grunt. One of the juveniles flicked its ears and wagged its tail, curious but respectful. Ben spoke quietly. "They know something rare happened." Clara reached for her field journal, her fingers stiff and wet, and flipped it open with care. She scribbled on the last page, her handwriting jagged but certain. "This morning, the Cypress River witnessed a miracle. For the first time in my career, I saw life defy odd sand. I finally understood what healing looks like." Behind them, the sound of an engine approached, slow and careful. Naomi Green, the senior ranger, stepped down from a small utility cart. Her khaki uniform was clean but wrinkled, and her silver blonde bun now fell loosely around her neck. In the early light, she looked softer, like the years of toughness had finally yielded to wonder. She brought with her a large, insulated container. "Warm formula just in case," she said, placing it gently on a nearby stump. She looked out over the scene. "We'll need to notify the Department of Wildlife. This'll make the national database. They'll probably want interviews, reports." Clara gave a tired laugh. "Let them wait. I just want to sit here for 5 more minutes." Naomi nodded and stepped back, understanding the sanctity of the moment. As the sun rose higher, the calves began their first attempt to stand. One lifted its front legs and flopped forward, then paused. The other managed to prop itself up for a moment, then collapsed in a small puddle of legs and squeaks. Clara watched, smiling, tears drying on her cheeks in the gentle wind. Ben, still crouched beside her, said softly, "They'll figure it out." Clara nodded. "So will I." The marsh glowed golden now, and above it, herons glided in wide arcs. The forest around them, so loud with storm the night before, was now filled only with soft breath, rustling leaves, and the slow stretch of a new day. There were no sirens, no applause, no headlines. Just a mother and her children, a circle of kin, and the humans who had stood by them when it mattered most. Sometimes, life chooses the quietest corners of the world to reveal its greatest miracles. In the heart of a muddy Louisiana swamp, beneath storm-laden skies and the breath of moss-covered trees, a mother hippo fought not just for her survival, but for the lives of 2 tiny, fragile beings. Against all odds, she brought them into the world, reminding us that the most profound forms of strength are often silent. Clara didn't just witness a rare birth. She rediscovered her own capacity for healing, for keeping promises whispered in the dark, and for believing in second chances. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments, especially your favorite moment. And if you want to be part of more tales that celebrate the quiet heroes of the animal world, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support keeps these stories alive.